My daughter's voice cut through the clinking glasses and low conversation like a blade. "You aren't important enough for my birthday. The story you are about to hear is a work of fiction created by the Her Chains channel team, based on real-life situations to convey lessons about family, emotions, and human values. All characters and events are illustrative." That was how the evening began to fall apart, one sentence spoken calmly, almost gently, as if Clara were commenting on the weather instead of slicing straight through her own mother. Marlene Shore, sat frozen at the long table in that Charleston restaurant, surrounded by relatives and colleagues who suddenly found the grain of the wooden table very interesting. Clara stood at the head, tall and polished, finishing announcements about her 50th birthday celebration. She looked exactly like the woman she'd been trying to become for years, confident, curated, untouchable. But when she turned toward me, something sharp flickered in her eyes. "It will be an exclusive event," she added, still addressing the room, but staring directly at me. "Strictly controlled guest list. I need everything to project the right image. Can we—" I couldn't get a word out. Not because I agreed. Not because I was confused, because the humiliation struck so quickly my breath simply vanished. Clara had dismissed me before, in smaller ways, quieter ways, but never like this. Never in front of people who mattered to her. Across the table, my husband Leonard shifted just slightly. A tightening of his jaw, a small inhale. No one else would have noticed. But I had spent more than 40 years learning the language of his restraint. Clara wasn't finished. "I hope everyone understands. Some people just don't fit what the event requires." The last word lingered like smoke. Leonard pushed his chair back and rose. He reached into his jacket, pulled out his phone, and spoke one quiet sentence that emptied the room of every remaining smile. "Cancel every reservation under Clara Finley's event." Chairs creaked. Forks stopped midair. Clara's face drained of color. No one at that table had ever heard Leonard use that tone or realized he had the authority to say something like that. And before anyone could recover, everything snapped to black in my mind. 2 weeks earlier, Charleston has always worn its history like jewelry, polished, displayed, and carefully arranged so no one sees the tarnish underneath. In this city, reputation is a currency, and people like Clara treat it more seriously than actual money. I never fit naturally into that rhythm. I was raised to value kindness over spectacle, sincerity over presentation. Clara, on the other hand, grew up watching the world reward polish. And somewhere along the way, she convinced herself she had to become someone brighter than where she came from. The distance between us did not appear suddenly. It widened year by year, inch by inch. Each time she corrected the way I pronounced a restaurant name, or suggested a different dress because mine looked a little homemade, I always tried to laugh it off. I told myself she was stressed, or trying too hard, or simply wanted everything perfect. Mothers excuse more than they should. When Clara met Evelyn Drake, things sharpened. Evelyn was an image consultant who spoke in branding language and evaluated people the way jewelers inspect diamonds. She encouraged Clara to build a version of herself that Charleston's elite would accept. I watched my daughter imitate Evelyn's posture, her clipped way of speaking, her disdain for anything ordinary. The more Clara embraced that world, the more she tried to push me outside of it. One evening, she called me before a business dinner she was hosting at a high-end rooftop bar. Her tone was soft but rehearsed. "Mom, tonight is important. Investors expect a certain look, and I cannot risk the wrong impression." "The wrong impression meaning me?" I asked. Clara hesitated. "It is better if you skip this one. Just this once." I felt something inside me drop, but I kept my voice steady. "All right, Clara, I understand." Leonard listened from the doorway. He did not interrupt, but when I hung up, His eyes followed me with a sadness that told me he understood exactly what had happened. Was that the moment Clara stopped seeing me as her mother and started seeing me as an obstacle she needed to remove? The announcement appeared on a bright Monday morning in the family group chat. Clara posted a polished invitation graphic for her 50th birthday celebration, complete with gold lettering and a photo of the venue. Beneath it was a long list of confirmed guests, relatives from out of town, business partners, childhood friends, spouses, even distant cousins I had not seen in years. My name was not there. I reread the list slowly, thinking perhaps I had scrolled too fast. But no matter how carefully I looked, the absence stayed. A few seconds later, a private message popped up from my cousin. "Lydia, I am sure it is a mistake." Right? Her hesitation hit harder than the question itself. People were already assuming Clara would exclude me on purpose. I called Clara immediately. She answered with the crisp tone she reserved for work calls. "Mom, can we make this quick? I am on my way into a meeting. I saw the guest list." I said, "You forgot to include me." There was a pause, then the soft click of her exhale. "I did not forget. The event needs to maintain a particular atmosphere. It is highly curated. I am your mother." "Clara, that is not the point. This event is about my brand. It is a reflection of what I have built. You do not fit the aesthetic I am aiming for. Please understand." Her voice was calm, almost gentle, as if she were explaining a logistical issue rather than cutting me out of a milestone in her life. Something inside me tightened, and the words tangled in my throat. "So you are leaving me off on purpose?" I whispered. "I need the night to go a certain way," she replied. "This is not personal. It is strategic." But it was personal. It was the most personal thing she had ever done. When I hung up, my hands were trembling. Leonard walked in just as the first tear fell. He froze, as if he were seeing something rare and dangerous. I wiped my face quickly, but he had already understood. Leonard had always been the quiet one. People mistook that quiet for passiveness, but I knew better. My husband was a man who measured every word before speaking, a man who built his life on patience rather than noise. His success never came with grand announcements or expensive displays. It came from decades of small, precise decisions made behind closed doors. Charleston's downtown business district knew him far better than our extended family ever did. When he stepped into certain offices, receptionists straightened their posture, executives lowered their voices. I once accompanied him to a luncheon and watched a developer nearly trip over his own feet, trying to greet Leonard first. Leonard just nodded and asked about the man's children, as if none of it meant anything. At a family barbecue last summer, my cousin's husband laughed and said, "Leonard, with all your fancy connections, you probably know the hotel owner personally." Leonard only gave a small smile, the kind that revealed nothing. The man kept chuckling, never realizing he had accidentally told the truth. After Clara's birthday list was posted, Leonard became unusually focused. I found him sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open. "You are looking something up?" I asked. He did not look up. "Your daughter's event venue." "Why?" He clicked through several pages, reading quietly. "Because I want to see exactly who she is dealing with." After a moment, he turned the screen toward me. The logo of a large hospitality conglomerate glowed at the top. I recognized it from news articles about major acquisitions. She booked through one of my companies. Leonard said, or rather, one of the companies I hold significant stake in. I stared at him. "You never mentioned that. It was never relevant." He said evenly, "Until now." There was no anger in his voice, just something steely and deliberate. He closed the laptop with a soft tap. "If she wants cruelty," he said, "she will learn cruelty has consequences." Looking back, I could trace every sharp edge in Clara's voice to the years she spent trying to outrun who she used to be. Charleston society had a way of deciding who belonged and who merely visited the edges, and Clara grew up terrified of being seen as someone who never truly fit. I remember her coming home from school in tears because a classmate mocked the dress I had sewn for her recital. From that moment on, she associated simplicity with shame. As an adult, she climbed the social ladder with the determination of someone starving. She learned the right restaurants, the right charities, the right people to be photographed beside. When she met Evelyn Drake, everything accelerated. Evelyn saw potential in Clara and treated her like a raw gemstone that needed polishing. I watched my daughter mimic Evelyn's posture, her speech, even the disdain she used for anything unpolished. One afternoon, I walked into Clara's office to drop off a scarf she had left at my house. Evelyn was reviewing photos from a recent fundraiser, and Clara leaned over her shoulder. "My mother is wonderful," Clara said, her voice soft but strained. "But she does not photograph well." Evelyn nodded as if analyzing a business problem. "Authenticity is charming in small doses," she said, "but branding requires precision. You cannot afford visual distractions." They both acted as though I were not standing there. I set the scarf down quietly and stepped back into the hallway before either of them noticed the tremor in my hands. Later that week, Clara called to explain her 50th birthday celebration. "This is a rebranding moment," she said. "Everything must feel elevated. I would love to help." I told her. She hesitated long enough to give me the answer before she spoke it. "I think it is better if you stay out of the planning. I need consistency." I felt the rejection settle deeper than the earlier ones. Clara called me the next morning, her tone clipped and efficient, as if she were handling a minor scheduling issue. I wanted to make things official. She said, "You will not be attending the celebration. It is finalized." I sat at the kitchen table, gripping the phone. "Clara, I am your mother. You are turning 50. I raised you. How does this make sense to you?" She exhaled, and for the first time, the polished facade slipped. "Mom, please do not make this emotional. These events are complicated. You look out of place at the upscale functions I host. People say things. I cannot keep compensating for that." The words landed harder than she intended. She must have realized it too, because she rushed to soften them. "I mean that kindly. It is just the reality of how these spaces work." "Embarrassed," I whispered. "You are embarrassed by me." Silence. That confirmed everything. My heartbreak swelled so fast, I had to press my hand to my chest to steady myself. I barely noticed Leonard standing in the doorway until he stepped closer. His expression tightened with every word he overheard. Clara continued, unaware. "Please understand. Mom, this is about image, not family. I need this night to be flawless." "I understand," I said finally, my voice thin. "You have made yourself clear." After I hung up, Leonard sat beside me. He did not touch me right away. He knew I needed a moment to breathe. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "Do you want me to stay out of this?" I had never said anything but yes before, but not this time. "No," I whispered. "I do not." He nodded once, stood, and walked to his office. Within minutes, I heard the cadence of controlled, strategic conversation flowing through the walls. Names, departments, authorizations. When he returned, he said, "Every booking she made is under my authority. That means I decide what stands." Leonard's words, calm, final, and delivered without hesitation, hung in the air of the restaurant. Cancel every reservation under Clara Finley's event. The sound of chairs shifting died instantly. Clara blinked as though someone had slapped her. I could almost see the gears turning behind her eyes as she searched for a reality where her father had not just dismantled her celebration with a single instruction. Her phone vibrated first, then again, then continuously. A steady hum that grew louder as the room stayed painfully silent. She glanced down. A faint tremor passed through her hand. "What is happening?" she whispered, scrolling through messages. I watched the color drain from her face. The venue canceled. She breathed. They said an internal directive came down. Another buzz. The catering team withdrew. Buzz. The wine sponsor backed out. They said my event no longer aligns with their partnerships. Her voice cracked. "This cannot be real." Leonard remained standing, hands loosely at his sides, expression unreadable. Clara's chair scraped violently as she stood. "How could you do this?" she demanded. "This is my 50th birthday. I worked for months on this. You just destroyed everything." Leonard's voice did not rise. It did not waver. "I did not destroy anything. I reclaimed what belonged to me." She stared at him, stunned. "Reclaimed. This event has nothing to do with you." He stepped closer. "Every inch of that celebration sits on properties, partnerships, and contracts I control. You built your empire on ground you never bothered to examine." People around us had fallen into an uneasy silence, pretending not to listen, but unable to look away. Clara's outrage shook her voice as she said, "You ruined me." "No," Leonard replied, quiet but merciless. "You ruined your mother." The words hit harder than the cancellations. Clara looked at me as though seeing me for the first time, but I could not offer comfort this time. She had crossed the line herself. Clara showed up at my door the next morning without calling. Her makeup was smudged, her hair pulled back in a way that told me she had not slept. When I opened the door, she did not step inside right away. She just stood there, gripping the edge of her purse as if she needed something to anchor her. "Mom," she said softly, "can we talk?" I moved aside, and she walked in with the hesitant steps of someone entering unfamiliar territory. We sat at the kitchen table, an ordinary place for a conversation that felt anything but ordinary. Clara looked down at her hands. "I know I have hurt you," she began. "More than once. More than I want to admit." I waited. She took a shaky breath. "Growing up in Charleston circles, it was hard. Kids made comments about the way you dressed, the way you spoke. They said our family was less than theirs. I pretended I did not care. But I did. I cared too much." Her voice cracked. "I carried those words for years, and instead of letting them go, I let them reshape me." "You let them reshape how you saw me," I said quietly. She nodded, tears welling. "I did. I tried so hard to fit into a world that did not want me, and every time I got close, someone reminded me where I came from. And you were part of that reminder." She swallowed. "So I thought if I reinvented myself, maybe I could escape everything that made me feel small. And that included distancing myself from you." I felt the words strike deeper than she intended, but I kept my composure. Clara wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. "I did want you at the birthday, Mom. I did. I was just so afraid people would judge me again. I let fear control every decision." She looked up, eyes pleading. "I am sorry. I truly am. I was wrong." I listened, letting her apology settle in the space between us. I did not rush to close the distance or reassure her. Some wounds needed quiet before they could begin to heal. 2 days after Clara came to my home, Leonard asked me to sit with him in his study. His desk was covered with neatly arranged documents, each in its own folder. The air felt heavier than usual, as if the room itself understood something irreversible was about to happen. "I have spoken with Graham Pierce," Leonard said, referring to our longtime attorney. "The estate restructuring is complete." I folded my hands in my lap. "Leonard, are you certain?" He looked at me, calm but resolute. "Clara made choices. I will not punish her beyond what is fair, but I will not allow her to treat you as insignificant again." This ensures that will never happen. A knock sounded at the door. Leonard rose to open it, and Clara stepped in. She looked smaller than the woman who had commanded a dining room full of people just days ago. "What is going on?" she asked, glancing between us. Leonard handed her a folder. "These are the updated terms of the family estate." She opened it, skimming quickly. At first, her expression was blank. Then her brow knit. Then her eyes widened. "You put my inheritance behind requirements," she whispered. "Behavioral clauses," Leonard confirmed. "You will receive access only after consistent demonstration that you can treat your mother with dignity." She looked at me, stunned. "You agreed to this." "I agreed," I said quietly, "that there must be safeguards." Clara turned another page and froze. "The charitable funds, the scholarships, these are all named after Mom." Leonard nodded. "The money originally allocated for your unrestricted inheritance has been redirected to community programs, mentorship grants, and education funds honoring Marlene's name. Her kindness deserves a legacy. Your actions made that clear." Clara pressed a hand against her forehead. "So I caused this." "You created the conditions," Leonard replied. "We adjusted the consequences." She sank into the nearest chair, overwhelmed. "I never wanted this. I never meant to lose everything." "You have not lost everything," I said, my voice soft but steady. "But you will not be allowed to harm me again." Clara covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook not with anger, but with recognition. This was not a punishment handed down by cruelty. It was the inevitable cost of her choices. Months passed before Clara gathered the courage to knock on my door again. The sharpness in her voice had softened, and the restless energy she used to carry everywhere seemed to have settled into something quieter. She never asked to erase the past. Instead, she asked if we could try again slowly. I agreed, not because I had forgotten, but because I wanted to see who she might become without the weight of her old fears. One afternoon, she invited me to a small gathering in her backyard. No photographers, no decorative arches, no curated guest lists, just a simple table, a few chairs, and an honest attempt to start over. Leonard came with me, keeping a respectful distance as Clara prepared lemonade and wiped her palms nervously on her skirt. "I wanted it to feel real," she said as she handed me a glass. "No pressure. Just us." We talked about ordinary things, at first her work, my garden, a book I had been reading. The conversation wobbled sometimes, like a newborn taking its first steps. But it stayed upright. That was enough. When the afternoon sun began to dip, Clara excused herself briefly. She returned holding a wrapped frame. Her hands trembled slightly as she set it in front of me. "I had this printed," she said. "It is from the day I came to apologize. I know it was not a beautiful moment for either of us, but it was honest." I peeled back the paper. It was a photo of us sitting at my kitchen table, both of us tired, both of us raw, both of us finally telling the truth. "I want this version of us to be the one people see," she said quietly. "Not the image I tried to build, not the distance I created. This." A warmth spread through my chest. Not forgiveness, not entirely, but recognition. We were rebuilding slowly, and that was its own kind of grace. Later that evening, as Leonard and I walked to the car, I thought of everything that had happened. The pain, the betrayal, the justice that followed, and the quiet steps toward healing. I did not destroy Clara's life. I simply made sure she could no longer diminish mine. Life has a way of teaching the same lesson until we learn it. Love means opening the door, but dignity means knowing when to close it. Boundaries do not erase love, they protect it. If you connected with my story, do not forget to like, comment, or subscribe for more.